In today's video, we kick off a new series where we review all the offseason activity for each team and give the GM a grade. So GM report cards is returned for this offseason. We're getting started first with the Boston Bruins. We'll take a look at all their trades, signings, and grade their work coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we bring back the offseason review of the GM Report Card Series. Now that we're into August, of course, the offseason activity is kind of slowed down enough that we kind of have a pretty good idea of where teams are at. There's still some RFAs left to sign, obviously, including a key player here for the Bruins. But at the end of the day, we have a pretty good idea where things are at. Can't wait for every single player to get signed. Otherwise, it'll be too late starting this series before the season starts. So we're going to start by looking through the trades that the team has made, look at how that's all played out. We'll take a look at any re-signings and UFAs that they've made. Then we'll kind of analyze, okay, who's in versus who's out. How does this team look? Did they make enough moves here to make the team at least the same or better? So that's ultimately, depending on where the team was at last year, if you were a high-ranking team, had a really good year, at the very least, you want to come out thinking, okay, we're just as good, if not better. If they've gotten worse, I feel, then obviously that's going to impact the grade, which we'll do at the end of the video. So let's start first with looking at the Boston Bruins trades that they've made since their season ended here. There's not a lot, but there is a big one. The Linus Ullmark trade, ultimately sending the former Vezina Trophy winning goaltender to the Ottawa Senators. And I'm a little bit surprised that the Sens pulled off this type of deal. Rookie GM Steve Staios, in my opinion, did a good job. But let's take a look at the full return here to the Bruins. Ultimately, if Ullmark does not re-sign in Ottawa, this could prove to be an especially good deal for the Bruins, given that, obviously Ottawa didn't benefit from his services for too long. But if he does play to his capabilities and ends up extending for, even a few extra years, then it's going to be a good deal for them for sure. Obviously, the jury's still out on how this return will look for the Bruins, but let's take a look. They get back Joonas Korpisalo. Of course, Korpisalo had signed a 5-year contract with the Ottawa Senators, only had 1 year in. Of course, it was not a good season at all. He was one of the worst in the league, analytically, statistically speaking. So 4 years left at $4 million per season. So he signed a free agent contract with the Sens last year, 5 times 4. One of Pierre Dorion's worst moves. I mean, a lot of us joked about the summer of Pierre the past couple of years before he was ultimately let go by Ottawa. And a lot of the moves he made looked good at the time and turned out not to be so good. And obviously this Korpisalo signing is right at the top of that list. So Ottawa retains 25% of that contract. So that $4 million cap hit for the Bruins becomes $3 million. So they got Korpisalo on the books for 4 more years at $3 million per season. That is a very expensive backup goaltender, especially with Jeremy Swayman expected to be the goalie of the present and the future, playing a much bigger workload. He's going to command big bucks. He's going to have to play the games to earn that money. So, Korpisalo, really for the most part, is going to be a 1B or a backup. Probably only playing at most, assuming Swayman stays healthy, probably ideally 25 games, and you need a good goalie in those games that could ultimately have a major impact on your season. So they have Korpisalo with 25% retained. They get Mark Kastelik. Kastelik is a fourth-line player, has been the fourth-line center in Ottawa for parts of the past couple of seasons. He's a big dude, 6'4", 230 pounds or so, but he's very, very in great shape. He was always right at the top of when it comes to training camp, all the cardio testing and everything like that for the Sens. He did really, really well. So he's a big boy, but he's lean and he's really good on face-offs. And certainly he can skate well for a big guy too. The knock on Kastelik is for a big guy. You want to see more physicality. I know this past year especially, numerous times when you get back to the bench after a shift, you'd see the coaches. I know even Daniel Alfredsson's been a big role with the forwards here since he's gotten into coaching with Ottawa. And it would be like not every time, but like a lot. It'd be like, tell him, finish your check. You're going in on a forecheck and you're just doing a flyby. So you need to get, if he can learn to build that into his game to be more physical on a regular basis, he could be a really good fourth-line player. I thought he had a good potential in Ottawa. He's really good on face-offs. Like I said, he's got the size. He's not afraid to drop the mitts. He can be a tough guy, too. So certainly it adds size and strength and face-off ability to their bottom six. So, in all honesty, I think the fact that he drops the gloves, I think Bruins fans will like Cassidy. It's just a matter of, will you get that physicality, shift in and shift out? If he can get that down, he'll be a real popular player in Boston. And then, of course, they get their first-round pick back, which ultimately was traded a few times, ended up with Ottawa, back to Boston. They draft the big centerman, Dean Letourneau. So they get a huge... another Letourneau is a guy similar size, actually, to Kastelik, maybe even a smidge bigger. Obviously younger, a little more raw, might be a little bit of a project player, but I think the fact that, you don't get a lot of opportunities to draft these huge centermen like that, so I can understand why they did what they did there. I mean, I had him down as being a first-round pick, somewhere in that bottom, probably 7 to 8 picks of the first round. So I was not shocked to see Boston go for Letourneau. So that's really the full return now. You get Korpisalo for 4 years, Kastelik and Letourneau. And I know that they were kind of going for cap space with an Allmark trade. They couldn't really afford to keep him and Swayman. They needed a cheaper option to be the tandem goalie with Swayman. I'm surprised Korpisalo's that guy. To be honest, I don't like that return for the Bruins. I like Kastelik. I like Letourneau. They could be pieces, but for a Vezina Trophy winning goalie, you better hope Korpisalo can find his game. And to me, there's just a lot of risk. And like I said, maybe he bounces back. He had a major hip surgery a couple of years ago as well. Had a good stretch in LA before he became a Senator at the end of the season before. But really, if you look at his history, there's not like a long stretch of strong play. This is not like a blip. I mean, it got worse, mind you. But yeah, wasn't it? I mean, a great deal for the Senators, not a great deal for the Bruins. So I'm not loving that deal. But we'll see. They didn't really get a lot of relief. They get Korpisalo back with $3 million. Kastelik's making like $850 or $835. So they get a little bit of relief, over $1 million. But yeah, at the end of the day, I don't love that trade for the Bruins. They also traded Jacob Laukow in a fourth-round pick to Minnesota for Vinny Lettieri in a fourth-round pick. So they swapped spots in the fourth round of the draft, and then Laukow for Lettieri. So really, that's not a major trade. It's kind of just swapping players to get fresh start. That's not a huge deal at all. Like I said, the Allmark trade was the main offseason move for Sweeney. Looking at the signings, early before the draft, they re-signed a couple younger players that are going to be American Hockey Leaguers and maybe be call-up, but Ian Mitchell, Brandon Bussey gets contracts, 1 year's, two-way deals, $775. They're getting into free agency. Ultimately, they had some turnover. They re-signed a few players, including Mark McLaughlin. It's another 1 year deal, but they bring in some new names, some fresh talent via free agency from other teams, including the big signing being Elias Lindholm. Gets a 7-year contract, $7.75. They signed Nikita Zadorov, 6 years at $5 million per year. Bring in Max Jones from Anaheim, 2 years at $1 million per season. Jordan Osterley gets a 2-year contract around league minimum, so that's pretty good. Riley Tufte comes in on a 1-year league minimum deal. He's an option. He could end up being American Hockey Leaguer as well, but it has some experience, so it can be a call-up option at the very least as well. So really, for the most part, I like the players they've brought in. I don't love every contract. I think that Max Jones contract has a real potential to be pretty solid. It's $1 million. He can play in their bottom six. He can give you, I think, some of the things that you hope Mark Kastelik brings you as well. So between Jones and Kastelik, that does really add some size and decent skating into their bottom six there. Be more physical forecheck. So those are some good moves. There's a Zadorov contract and the Lindholm contracts for me. They're good players. I love the fit with the team. I just think they overpaid a bit. And unfortunately, on July 1, when you're bringing in players from other teams and you have a lot of competition, including the teams that they're with sometimes, you have to sometimes overpay. July 1 is typically, it's always when you see, players that are overpaid and mistakes made by general managers. It happens a lot. Not to say that players don't get re-signed with the same team and get a new big money deal and it doesn't work out and it was a big mistake. That does happen on occasion, but it happens a lot more when teams are bringing in players from elsewhere on the UFA day on July 1. So I don't think that these are going to be players that bomb or anything like it. It's not going to be like, like a just, epic fail. I just don't know that they're going to live up to those numbers. Now, Elias Lindholm, a lot of that contract was earned, to my opinion, when he was playing on the top line of the Calgary Flames with Matthew Tkachuk and Johnny Gaudreau. That was one of the best lines in hockey for a while. It's been a little while, obviously, since he's had those line mates. His numbers dipped down. We've seen the strong two-way play. That is a for sure. And without Bergeron being there now for a year, they definitely needed that kind of player. He's probably the best. I've been preaching that for about a year now, that Lindholm would be the best player to bring in to try to give you what Bergeron did. He's not Patrice Bergeron. He'll never be Patrice Bergeron, but he's probably the closest they can get for players that were available. I mean, are there other players that are two-way centers around the league that are better than Lindholm? Yeah, there is. I mean, he's one of the better ones. And for guys that were, possibly going to be moving, which you've known for some time that he would be, then it certainly makes sense that he would be a perfect fit there. And Zadorov, he gives you the size. He loves to hit. I think he'll be a great fan favorite in Boston. We've seen it in Calgary. We've seen it in Vancouver. He's made his way around. Ultimately, though, I think for what he gives you, it'll be debatable if $5 million's a little bit much. He's definitely going to play top 4 minutes. So, playing top 4, along with McAvoy and Carlo, obviously, right up there. It's not, and then you get Hampus Lindholm too. So that gives them a really solid top 4. Right, you get Mason Lohrei. I wonder, because that's going to keep Lohrei kind of on your third pair, and eventually, though, like you would hope that Lohrei gets a bigger role as the youngster. I mean, he's going to work his way up and earn more minutes, and then you get Lindholm and Zadorov now, is both signed for lucrative contracts long term. That's going to keep him down, right? So, not for that reason. I like the fit. I just don't, and even the money's not terrible. It's just 6 years for what you have coming up. It just says, I'm not sure. Maybe a shorter term might have been better there. In Lindholm's case, again, I don't have an issue with the term for Lindholm. I think he's at a good age that the years should be fine. I think he'll play into his later years of his career as well. I just don't know that he's going to give you the offense to produce that type of contract. But if he gets a chance to play, and he will definitely get a chance to play with some stronger players. If you look at after the Flames lost Gaudreau and Tkachuk, obviously he had different line mates. When you looked at him in Vancouver, he was largely playing on the third line. I think initially, if I'm not mistaken, they gave him a chance to play with Pettersson on the wing, and that wasn't really working the greatest, so they moved him to be the 3C, which 3C for Lindholm, that's a really deep center depth for the team, and they did really well, but he wasn't getting a ton of offense. He was playing more strong defensively, had a bit of an offensive output when he first got there, and then it kind of leveled off. So, if he can play consistently, top 6 centerman, really he should ultimately be the team's number 1 center. If he gets a chance to play with Pasternak a lot, well, that's going to help with the point totals if he's feeding him. He is more of a shoot-first centerman as well, so maybe playing him with Pasternak may not be the absolute best spot. Maybe he plays more with Marchand. And if you look at their top 6, I mean, he's going to play with one of them. I mean, the projected lineup right now has Lindholm with Pasternak and Zacha, and that could very well work. That his point totals could go up because of that, and if it does, well, then ultimately that contract will work out. It just comes with some risk based on his more recent play, but given the role that they can give him, it theoretically should be all right. But obviously a 7-year term, he's probably going to play long after Marchand's done, and then you've got they're going to have to find some more top 6 forwards or have them elevated within or internally here over the next year or two as the guys that are continue to get a little bit older, like Marchand and Coyle, etc. So we'll see. So that's pretty well all of their signings. So if we kind of summarize things, for players that are no longer there with the Bruins, out we have Linus Ullmark, Jake DeBrusk, who was a pretty consistent, mostly top 6, but at times third line player. JVR is no longer there. We got Danton Heinen in return. Those two guys were both just shy of 40 points last year, so that's decent amount of offense that's no longer with the team. Lomko's gone. On the back end, you got Grzelcyk and Forbort, as well as Shattenkirk. So there's 3 veteran defensemen out, whereas on the back end you mainly brought in Zadorov, and then Osterley will be like your number 7 guy essentially. Pat Maroon, who they picked up at the deadline, did not remain. Milan Lucic, who signed a 1-year deal with the Bruins last year, only played a handful of games before he ended up in a personal matter in the courts, ended up on a leave of absence, I think is what they called it, and he's not returned. He's not signed. I'm not sure if Lucic is ever going to play anymore. Haven't heard anything about him, so I'm not sure where things stand, but he's currently not signed with the Bruins. So that's a lot of guys out. 3 veteran defensemen, but none of the guys there that really had a huge role. The main changes are in your middle 6 part of your lineup, where you got like DeBrusk, JVR, and Heinen. Those 3 guys all put up decent production, whereas you're bringing in guys like Elias Lindholm and Max Jones, and then of course through trade you got Kastelik for the bottom 6 there, and you're hoping that Matt Poitras, who had a good start to the year, went back to junior, maybe he makes the jump next year as well. So ultimately on the inside for joining the team, you get Zadorov, Lindholm, Jones, Tufte, and Osterley. And of course, there's some minor league deals, but we're not going to get into every single one of those. So you're looking at your lineup now. Likely in the forward group, you're going to have Lindholm. Likely projected right now that he could play with Pasternak and Zacha, whereas you're going to probably have Coyle, Marchand, maybe Geekie as the second line. Third line's projecting it could be Justin Brazeau with Frederick and Matt Poitras perhaps. And then the fourth line could be a combination of Max Jones, Mark Kastelik, and Johnny Beecher. So that fourth line I like. It gives you Beecher's pretty good on faceoff. Kastelik's good on faceoffs. Good speed there, physicality. So that's a pretty good looking fourth line. The third line is not too bad. I do like Brazeau and Frederick. They can definitely bring a different element. Lots more size in that lineup for sure. Geekie to me though is not a top 6. So they're still short of top 6 guys. So I would imagine that this is going to be their main area of focus, maybe near the deadline, is to add another scoring forward. Of course, between the pipes, you got Swayman and Korpisalo. Korpisalo, obviously a big member of the, which I forgot to mention here, being on the inside. So, obviously, to play him off of Allmark is quite a change, right? So goaltending, you had Allmark and Swayman. Now you have Swayman and Korpisalo. That's definitely a downgrade. The other thing about Jeremy Swayman, as I record this video, he is not signed, so there's a little bit of an incomplete there, but it is rumored that he's looking for a $9 million deal if they go like 7-8 years. Maybe it's more shorter term in the $6 million range. Or maybe it's 3-4 years of that. I'm not sure what they end up doing, but at the end of the day, you could say that the goaltending tandem is not as good as it was before. And Swayman, because of having Allmark there, never had to play the bigger workload. So he's been really good, and I have no doubt he's going to be fine, but he's yet to show that he can play 60, 65 games and do the same results. So that's going to be something to look for this year as well. On the back end, like I said, you've got Zadorov, McAvoy, Lindholm, Carlo, Lowry, Peak. You guys that are gone are Grzelcyk, Forbort, Shattenkirk. I think that, and then of course you get Osterley as the extra there. To me, that blue line's probably even better than last year. So I think they've improved the blue line a bit. And up front, I'm going to say that overall, I'm going to say the forward group was somewhat comparable, but if you look at the production of DeBrusk, JVR, Heinen, like the guys that were playing in your middle 6 type of role, second, third line, and then you insert guys like obviously Lindholm being your main one, and then you've got Kastelik coming in, and then you're hoping Poitras can rejoin from the junior ranks. We don't know what he's going to be capable of in a full season if he makes the team. If Poitras can't go, or if they don't feel he's ready, maybe we have to see another move here. Maybe another player gets brought in. I'm not sure, but the forward group, I don't know that they're quite as deep, but they can hopefully be better two-way with the addition of Lindholm and definitely have more size. So I'm going to kind of give them a passing grade there, but I'm not sure that they're going to produce quite as much offense. And if they don't, that's going to be a problem because I don't think the goaltending is going to be as good. Overall, Swayman will have to be able to, if he can play the bigger workload and keep the same stats up, and then you get the blue line just as good or better. Ultimately, I think this team is going to be, they're still going to be a playoff team, I think. I do see them probably overall, it's hard to say, right? Because we don't know. But I'm going to give the GM Don Sweeney a grade.
of a B- here, mainly because the Swayman contract's not done. And depending on how they handle that, maybe that grade changes. Maybe it goes to either up to a B+, A-. But for the most part, like the Ullmark trade wasn't awesome. It could be okay, but it could have been better, I think. And then with the signings, we'll see how things work out. But at the end of the day, they don't, because the Swayman contract's not done yet. I thought they would have been a little bit more aggressive getting that done so that they could maybe try to squeeze some more money if they can find it to improve the forward group. It's going to be tough given where they're at with the cap. So let me know your thoughts on all of the moves and how you would grade Sweeney's work in the offseason here, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We have plenty more coming in this series, 31 more teams to come. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.